into VMS, you will notice, and I'll tell you some of the words that we kind of use that we forget other people don't always know, but this is the switchboard. And whenever we give directions on how to go somewhere, we'll usually say go to setup or go to entry or go to reports. So if I say go to setup, the icons that I see here will be the icons that I have permissions to see. So the very first one is employee information. But before I go there, I want to show you another button. Right up here is a help button. And also you can hit F1. By hitting F1, it will take you into an online manual, and you can go in and put keywords and search for those topics. And go ahead and Dean, you might want to mute your office.
Yeah, we'll get back. I'm going to switch over to the telephone. I'm going to dial back in on that.
Okay. So right here is the different things that the topics on that subject that you're able to go in to read about it, print, whatever you want to do. So it's a nice tool. This is also the first thing that gets updated. So whenever Mike makes changes or, especially the way things presentation or something, that's one of the first places that it's going to get updated is right there. So don't forget about that tool. That's a really nice, helpful tool. The other one is we're going to start here with setup and employee information. Now, when your software was installed, the person who did the installation, did they cover employee information and securities with you? Okay. So what I tell people when we go over this is revisit this setup after your training, because you may decide to change certain things after when you realize what each of the securities do. So if you come up here and you do the plus sign, it'll look like this. And it says new employee. You would go in here. You're going to give them a user ID and a password. Oops. Okay. Now, if you I need to show you the website. It's kind of weird. If you're hosted in the program control, there's a spot that says force password. Force password. So if I go to program control, it is right here, force password. Force password means when they log into VMS, they'll have the opportunity to put their user ID and password in. If it's unchecked, VMS is looking at the computer that they logged into with Microsoft, that ID and password matches. So most of the time people have force password because they will have a user ID that is different than their computer. Like my computer just says user. So if I had that unchecked, when I would go to log in, it would tell me that I didn't have permissions because my computer is user and it's not allowing me to enter a user ID and password. So this is where you'll want to put it. We do not assign it. We don't keep a track of it. So if you called our help desk and said, I can't get into VMS, we're going to ask you, we're going to assume that it is getting in and connecting to our server. But if it's within the system itself, we can't help you. We don't have access to that. So you'll want to make sure that you write down the user ID and passwords for anybody in your office and keep it in a secure place. Okay? Now, there's a button here that says Link Property. In the software, all the properties that you own are listed right here on the Link Properties. Now, when you first start VMS, you're not going to have any. But if you click Link Property, what you've done is that username, so let's just go grab someone. Okay, if I say link password right here, Alina here would only have properties that I linked her to. So when she would go into any of the other areas in the software and she'd do a drop down to select the companies that she wanted to view, she'd only see these properties. Okay? Now, if I was the accountant and I went and did accounting for everybody, I wouldn't check this because then she would have access to all properties. It doesn't matter. So you only click that button if you want to restrict that employee to certain properties. Okay, so that gives you the ability. Later on in the software, when we start talking about the web, there are different forms or different people that will get contacted through emails letting them know something came in. Or you might have a letter or with a merge code that has an email address. So if you want them to receive emails or them to be on letters, you'll need to fill out the email address, their first name and the last name. Now, if this employee quits, you would come in here and put a termination date. You wouldn't, like if you had someone who was taking over the same position, you wouldn't come and rename everything because this is tied to records that that person entered in the software, whether it was an AR, AP, general ledger. So by changing the name, it updates all the past records for the new employee. So you'll want to come in here and put in a termination date right here when you no longer want that employee to have permissions or be connected to any records. You have the ability to come in here and link them to a group. The groups are nothing more than allowing you to run reports saying who are in those certain groups. Titles will come in on the letterhead saying, you know, if they were a manager or something like that. Let me grab someone else. I have other people who use my database, and so all of a sudden I'll see a name here that I don't recognize. Okay, there we go. So this person is a property manager. She might have a title, and that title would be right there. So this is, now there's a place for you to put addresses, their address. Does this go anywhere in VMS? Do we use it? No, it's just for your internal thing. You can run an employee report to have it on there. But as far as the software, we don't care. And there's no merge codes that will bring that in. But what we'll bring in is their email address, their name, their title, their extension for phone numbers. It also can bring in a signature. So if you scan somebody's signature as a JPEG, you can go in and you can attach that signature. So now, be sure when you do it that you do save it small. Okay, I don't have a JPEG in this file, but it needs to be a JPEG, and then you would just attach it there by clicking there, going and grabbing the folder. Now, the link property, like I said, the value here is if you were going to restrict someone's use to certain properties. Now, later on, I will talk about how the types of correspondence and the leaders affect things. But the thing I want to talk about the most is this here, securities. This is what permissions that you are allowing that employee to have. And it's divided by entry, reports, and setup, just the same as here on the switchboard. So entry is where we actually go in and do our work. Setup is what we're going to be discussing this week. And then reports or rendering or reports. I suggest that after training you go back and visit this. Now, anything that has a green line means that it expands. And so if I give someone account maintenance permissions, then I could say exactly what areas there I want, and then there are certain areas that I could even say if they have read, write, and read, write. So Yadira is a manager. I might want her to be able to see billing or something like that, but I don't want her to be able to do anything with it. So it's up to you, you know, so you give someone read permissions or read, write, and delete. Okay? So like I said, after the training, you'll want to revisit the permissions because they'll make more sense to you. Any questions about that? Okay. Now, if you have someone like Yadira and her permissions are similar to another employee, the quickest way to add an employee is instead of hitting the plus sign, is to hit the icon that looks like two pieces of paper up here in the ribbon. If I select that, it will come up and it'll ask me if I want to copy just their security and their link property, and you can answer it either way you want. So now GoToMeeting slows everything down. So, okay. So if I say yes, it'll also do the link properties. If I say no, it'll just do the securities. So I'll have the new employee, and I know it's set up because up here I'm going to see new employee when it's finished. Okay, there we go, new employee. So they have all the same security, so I don't have to go through and check or uncheck everything. Then I would just go to the employee tab, and I would add in all my new employee information. So that's one of the quickest ways, and also one of the ways to help so you don't get carpal tunnel. Okay. Then I would, like I said, I would come in here. Okay, and then you go on and fill it out as you want. Now, in the setup area, all the tabs except for one, whatever you do there affects every single association. So in employee setup, everything I do there is for every association. Program control, things you would put here, affects all the different associations. And you're really not going to change much here right now, just to let you know. But one of the things that is here is that I want to point out is the record finder. So whenever I do a search, it'll limit the amount of records to my first 99. So if I went in and put show me all my Smiths, it will show me all my Smith homeowners. If I exceed 99, I'm only going to see the first 99. And some people do that because they want to limit that processing, especially if they're a huge company, because that can really slow things down. Another thing is when you learn about iExpert, you have the ability to say that you want every report that you do to print and go to iExpert, to only print or only go to iExpert. And this will make more sense to you later, but these are some options here. These options are related to report folders when we're in entry, and I'll cover those again. The coupon, we'll cover this when we do coupons. I think it's class 5, and then the web, which I'll cover then. But the most important thing here for you right now is that forced password, and you all want to make sure that it is checked, okay? Now, in program defaults, we're only going to cover a couple things, and these are the things that I'm going to give you homework on. So you might want to write this part down. Okay. So VMS does, it's the program defaults are different areas within the software. So we have like a vendor. Now, when you bring in your vendors, you might have a vendor that 15 of your 100 homeowners or associations use. I'm trying to find one that looks, okay, how about this one, attorney. So this one is used in some of my properties. So if I use it in 5 properties, I still am only going to bring it in to program defaults one time. And I'm going to bring that in, and then on the link properties, I will link it to properties that use it. So let's say that their information changes, like their address. I come here, I update it, and it updates that information to all of my properties. Okay? So the reason this is like a really easy example. Banks. When you first come in, you're going to have 2 or 3 banks are listed here. So one of the things that I would like you to do tonight is to go in and add any banks that you use that aren't here. So you would only add that bank one time. So if you use them 20 times, you still enter the bank in one time, and then we will link it to the properties. So to add a bank, You come up to the ribbon, and next to the plus sign, you do the drop down, and you say Add Bank. And then this yellow box here reads from right here, so you can put in your new bank. So now you can put their address. This used to be used for where it would pull for statements if you did them in-house, but it no longer does that. So if you want to enter in where the payments go ahead, but it's for information only. Later on, when you're integrated to, let's say, the bank that you use for coupons or something like that, let me show you. We would come in here and probably put the e-check information, the web e-card, or the website information. If you only use them for CDs or bank, for random things, most people only put the bare basics like that. Okay? But for the bank that you're going to use for your lockbox, we will come back and we'll add more information in, things like this, your management code. Later on, we'll go in and we'll tell it how to read the lockbox file they send you. You would link it to the banks that use them. And then on option, if the bank that you use is one of the banks that we integrate with, then we can set it up to automatically download your lockbox files, your the documents, upload your validation tables, positive pay if you use that, and also bank reconciliations. So that's what the options tab is. But if you would at this time just go in and add your basic banks, and I'm going to grab another one that is sort of like that one. Okay? Any questions on how to add a bank? All right. The next tab that I'd like you to do something with is the location tab. The location tab right now, when you go in, is going to look like that, demo, and it's going to have our office address. The reason we use this location is when you go and you set up a property, if you have an office, you only have one office, then you would only have one location. I'm going to bring this up so you can see how it relates to it. Okay. So when you set up a property, there is a place right here that says office. And this drop down, there's several of them here. So I have Washington office. If I go to location, you will see that I have Washington office. So what would happen is in all the letters, checks that I write, it will say the name of the association. In that case, it would have been Ashburn. And then it would have shown this as the address on the checks or the letters. So for people that have more than one location or satellite offices, what they would do is they would create more than one office by coming up here, doing a drop-down, saying Add Location. It would bring it in like this, and then they would add in the name of that office and the mailing address associated with it. So then when you set up a property, you link the office that manages that association with that. So that is where the software will then pick up this information for checks, for correspondence, and things like that. Make sense? So how many of you have more than one office? Anybody? Okay, so nobody has more than one. So what you'll do is just go to the Demo Data tab, and you're just going to change this to the name of your company, your mailing address. All right? Now, another thing we're going to do today is we're going to talk about your chart of accounts. So in your property setup, before we can set up almost anything in here, we need to bring in a chart of accounts. In your in the database that you currently have, there is 2 templates, and there is a chart of accounts in there. You are more than welcome to use that chart of accounts, or you can create your own. Now, in your chart of accounts, the 4 areas of information that you would need is 1, the code, 2, the name associated with that code, its type, and a category. So a type is normally assets, liabilities, expenses, etc. But for the exception in VMS, because this is where we enter in the chart of account, we enter in the account number, the routing number, the first check number, we need to know what kind of bank account it is. We know that a bank account is an asset. It's just bringing this to one more level. Now, the category is how you want it to look in your reporting. So I have an example here. I'm going to pull over. So this is a income statement, and you'll notice I have income and I have reserve, assessment reserves, I have other income, and then under my expenses, instead of just having small, say, type expenses, excuse me, I'm trying to do this so you can see it. And okay, can you all see this? Okay, so expensive, I have admin, I have common area, and what it does, it gives you these subtotals within the column. This is the year-to-date, it looks a little bit better. So for admin, I have a subtotal of 52. For common grounds, 250. Pool, 2350. And then if I keep going down the page, I will have a total expenses, okay, versus even down further. Now, those are what we call categories. So however you want it to look on your balance sheet or your income statement, you would create categories. Now, the reason I bring this up now is that in program defaults, if you go to the code tab and under program area, if you do a drop down right here, you're going to see GL categories. So I'm going to come over here and say GL categories, and here's my list. If on the chart of accounts that you want to use, we have not entered in a category that you need, or it's spelled slightly different, then you're going to want to add those in before we import in your chart of accounts. So an example is we put in the word utility, and if you want it to be utilities, you want to come in here and change it, so that when we import in the Excel spreadsheet into VMS using VMS import, we will want to make sure those categories that you've listed in that column match what's in here. So I had sent you all a sample chart of accounts. Kind of looks like, it looks exactly like this. So what I did here was I had one column that was the account number, one that was the name or description of that account number, then this was the type, and then this was the category. So you can take that existing one and use it as, you know, kind of a blueprint for your own, or you can, you know, start from scratch. But as long as that you realize that to import it in, we need these to be 4 separate columns and not commingled together. Any questions about creating your own chart of accounts to bring in for your properties? You guys are very talkative. Okay, well, that's great. So this is one of the first things, and we will be doing this on Wednesday. So I'm hoping that you all have your chart of accounts. If you already have it created, or if you're able to export it from your prior software into an Excel spreadsheet and you want me to look at it to see if it's set up okay, please forward it to me. I'd be more than happy to. Now, I only had one accounts receivable number. Some people have a segregated AR, and, you know, we can handle just pretty much anything that you need. If you have specific questions about your needs on setting up a chart of accounts for tracking, please let me know, and I can call you back after training, you know, and discuss that with you. Or you can say something now if you think it would help everybody else. So remember to do our categories. You will want to go to the code tab under the program areas, pick GL categories, and you would, if you have a new one, you'll just enter in the last cell right there. Okay? So for homework, if you could match these categories up, you could put your location in here and then add your place. Now we're going to talk about these other tabs as needed through the training. So now we're going to go on and we're going to talk about setting up a property. So we'll go to Setup, and we're going to go to Property Setup. When you first come in, you'll see probably your template. What we suggest is that you create what we call a master template. And the reason why is when you create a master template, you can use a lot of the defaults from that template to copy over to the new property so that you don't have to create each property from scratch. It saves a lot of time. So in a master template for a chart of accounts, you might want to consider adding every GL account number that you might ever need if you were to commingle all your properties together. So this one, my master didn't have a chart of account right at the moment, but so if you had in your expenses you had clubhouses or you had tennis courts, but not everybody had them, when you go to set up the property later, you'll copy from the master, but you can then go in and make anything for that association inactive by checking it here. But the purpose is this, that you would have every association would have the same chart of accounts so that your accounting department isn't having to memorize a whole bunch of GL account numbers for each property, but that they know that for every one, repairs in landscaping is 66010. And it just helps your department. Now, this is your software. You can set it up any way you want. That is just one of our suggestions. Okay, so if I was going to do a property from scratch, the way I would do it is I'm going to start on this first tab called Information. I'm going to come up to the ribbon and I'm going to do the drop down and I'm going to say Add Property. Now, it's going to ask me the name of that property. So if I was doing a master template, I would just call it Master Template.
Hey, Carol,
now,
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Hey, how do you, what about if you want to break down your chart of accounts into different groupings? So like, let's just say a janitorial was one of your examples on your master chart of accounts. Well, what if we wanted to break it down like this is our base janitorial GL code and we apply it to all of our properties? But let's say we need to take those janitorial costs and break them down to different areas within our association. Do we have the ability to keep the core GL count the same and then add like a -1, a -2, a -3? Or how does VMS address that?
You can do that. Another option, just a second, would be when you, let's say you did have janitorial. Let's go down further. Okay. I'm going to come down just a little bit further. These are administrative costs. Okay, so let's say I had one that was just called maintenance and repairs, and then I wanted to break it down like AC, so and so. You might want to say, okay, 65,000 are going to be my maintenance and repairs, and then leave a big gap before you start the next section, and then you could have, you know, -005. But if you don't want to do that, you always can come in here. We don't care what your chart account looks like. You can say 65005-01 if you want, okay? and you just added a name. Now, if you add one later, it is extremely easy to copy it to all your properties. You just right-click over it, and you copy it, and it copies that GL account. That way, you keep the integrity of your master chart of accounts there, so everybody does have the same chart of accounts. Okay. But if you want to do something like, like adding the 001, you can do that.
What about does it complicate anything from the uploading of the chart of accounts if we already have dashes included in our master? Okay.
No.
Okay.
We don't.
You don't care. It's a piece of cake. All right.
Yeah, it's a piece of cake. We don't care if it's an alpha or numeric even. I do have people that weren't strong in accounting or at all, and they were used to QuickBooks, and so they called their codes alarm, electric, instead of numbers. They regretted it later, but we didn't care, so we let them do it. That's what they wanted to do at the time of conversion. So, like I said, it can be alpha, it can be numeric, and it can have dashes if that's what you'd like.
Perfect. Okay? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so go back here. We're going to start our first property. We're going to come in here. We're going to say add property. Now, if I'm on the main information, one of the things that's kind of confusing when you first start out with VMS, you see that we have this row of tabs. But then, like if I go to accounting, you'll notice there's another row of tabs, and under that, there could be tabs there. So if I was on, let's say, accounting information right here, and I went to the drop down, most of the time the thing that you want to do is going to be grayed out. So there is sometimes that you have to be on certain tabs to add or delete something. So to add a property, normally you need to be on this main information. So I'm going to go to the drop down up by the plus sign, and I'm going to say add property. So I'm going to come here, and I'm going to say this is going to be my template. I'm going to tell it what type of community it is. So this doesn't mean single family condo. This means HOA. Some people use it to do commercial. Some people use it for rentals. And the reason that it has it is that you might have a totally different chart of accounts for a rental versus something else, okay? So most of yours will be HOA. Now, if we already had a master template, we could say copy from. So that's why we suggest you have a master, because if we do, and I'm just going to grab this one and pretend it's my master, then I'll show you all the things I can copy from that. So it reduces the amount of my setup for all my properties, which really can save a lot of time. Now, the last period, typically you want to put the date that you're going to bring in your beginning balances. So if I got this property and I was starting it on August 1st and I was just getting around to setting it up, my last period is going to be July 31st, because I'm going to bring in all my beginning balances as of July. So this will depend on when you want to start putting, when you're going to put those beginning balances in, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So when I say okay, and if I had started, these are the different things I can copy in. AP items, posting codes, compliance, coupons, delinquency setup, employee definitions, chart of accounts, departments, report definitions, vendors, and vendor definitions. So that means nothing to you guys right now, right? So we're going to discuss some of these. So I'm going to actually cancel this. I'm just going to, if I was doing this, I would have done just what I had done before for my master, and I would have had all of them blank, and I would have said copy property. Because I'm going to set it up for my most common denominator on how I run my business. So when my property comes up, here's my property. I'm going to pick the office that manages it. Now the address here is meant for where this property is located, not the address of the mailing, because remember, all the mailing information is going to come from the location connection, okay? But this is where it's located. So this gives me, if I was not familiar where the property was located, somebody called on the phone and said, hey, where's that? I could look here and say, oh, it's right here. And I could sound semi-intelligent, okay? So the information here is information only, and it is just to say where this is located. The address for the letterhead checks will be what office I connected it to, okay? Now, before I can do anything for any property, I have to do certain things. The very first thing I need, so I would need to start with the accounting, and that's what mostly we're going to talk about is certain tabs here. The first one is, if I went into AR, it's going to ask me for posting codes and give debits and credits for the GL account numbers that it goes to. Well, I have to have a GL to do that, correct? So this is why you'll need to bring in your chart of accounts so that you can go in and set up the rest of the accounting. Almost every tab within accounting will copy to a new property when you set it up. Does that make sense? Okay. So accounting, here's my GL chart of account I brought in. So I have my account number, my name of my thing, it's an operating account, and here's my category. Then for only your cash accounts, you will link it to a bank that you had set up. So all your banks that you set up in program control, I can right click and say add bank. Here's my list. So any bank that this property uses, I can drop and drag it over here. So when I come into my chart of accounts, so if I have a CD here and it's with US Bank, I'm going to link it to that bank right there. That way, when this allows me to do a bank reconciliation. It's a reserve account. Now, if you're going to write checks from there, then you'll put the routing and account number. That's up to you. I usually put the account number in here because when I'm in bank reconciliation, it shows me my account number. And if you have more than one with U.S. Bank, you may want to know which one you're reconciling when you choose. So that's up to you. You would also, but for all of the ones that you're going to write checks or do scan lines, you need to link it. You would put an account number, you'd put a routing number, and you'd put the first check number you're going to use. On a master property, however, you're only going to put the routing number because that routing number will copy over. An account number is unique to the association, so that won't copy. Okay, so if you use account on this example, 10,000 for all your properties, and that's your main operating account, then this works out really well. On your master, you'd put 10,000, you'd give it its name, you'd put the routing number in there and the bank, and then when you set up the property later, then all you have to do is update the account number and the first check number that you're going to use. Okay? So only on things like your bank accounts do you really ever fill out any information for rows 2 and 3. Row 3 here says instrument, start, maturity, interest rate, principal things. These might be used for loans or CDs. So that's up to you whether you want to use them or not. But as far as the software goes, what's going to show up on your balance sheet or your income statement is the name you put here and then if you list on we have lots of different reports to choose from. Some of them have the GL account number, and it'll be what you have there. The reason that you link it is for your lock boxes, writing checks, or coupons, okay? So you'll want to start your chart of accounts. Now, another thing that VMS does is, are you all familiar with fund accounting? It sounds like one of you where you're talking about the -0102. Were you using that for fund accounting?
We're familiar with fund accounting, but like a lot of times we'll have associations that will have, let's say, a shared maintenance agreement with an entity within the association. So a lot of times we'll set up dash accounts to track that separately and then run those shared costs into separate reports.
Okay. Well, what DMS does, which is really nice, is any account number you have here is this account number, and then you would say if the expense was from what department. And we have, on this example, I have operating reserves. But you can have as many as you want. I have one association who has 70 different departments. So what they do is they'll have an expense, and they can say if this cost, especially, you know, if you're in maintenance and repair, roof maintenance. Some associations might have a separate GL account number range for reserve of cost, and if you want to do that in VMS, you can. Or you can have one number like this, roof, and you would say dash reserves or operating. Now, whether you want to use departments or not, we do require you to have at least one department. And most people use operating reserves. Let me tell you what I did one time. You can add departments in at any time. So I had a situation where there was a judgment against the developer and the association was given a cash award. The board wanted to make sure and track all the money that was spent for that award. So came in, created a department, and whatever I wanted to call it, I could have put judgment. It would be nice if I could spell. And then this is just where it's going to roll up at the end of the year. I have my reserves. So then when I got the money, I deposited it into the operating account, and I used the department dash judgment. And then as we expense the cost for the judgment, whatever I used, whether it was, most of them were in the maintenance and landscaping areas, then I would do dash judgment. That allowed me to get a report, and you'll notice in our report names that we have things that will say by department. So when you go to look at our examples, like here is for income statements, you'll notice that part of the names in some of these will say by department, and so our fund. And that means this report will divide those expenses up by, I can get one that's consolidated all together, and then I can get one by operating, one by reserves, one by judgment, or whatever you call it. Okay? So, like I said, I have some people that don't use that, and they just put their department as general. It's up to you. What I see the most of the time is operating and reserves, because they're going to track their costs whether they are operating reserves. If you've never used a GL department or account number, you can right-click over it and delete it like that. But if you've ever used it anywhere in that association, you have to make it inactive. You cannot delete once you've used an account number or a chart of accounts or a AR posting code. Okay. Any questions about chart of accounts or departments? Okay. So Hunter Creek or Brink, no questions?
No, nothing from us so far, I think.
Okay. So
I'm from Hunter's Creek so far.
Thank you. So on my master, you'll notice that I don't have a chart of accounts. So if you create your first property like that, you won't either. So to bring in a chart of accounts, you would want to come in and create your chart of accounts like I did here. Now I also asked you to download the instructions for using VMS import. The only change that I use that is not in the instructions that I'm going to show you right now to bring in this chart of account is that when I save this, I save it as a tab delimited instead of a comma delimited, only because I have better luck with it. So once you have your chart of accounts in your Excel spreadsheet, you want to come in and say File, Save As, and then you're going to say that, like I said, I'm going to do mine as a tab delimited. So it's right here. You all see that tab delimited? It's right under Excel template 2003. So I'm going to say tab delimited. I'm going to call it chart of accounts, and I'm going to, right at the moment, put it on my desktop. Okay. Desktop, and I'm going to say save. Now, you're going to get this. I'm going to say yes in that format, and then I'm going to close it as soon as it finishes, and it's going to ask me, do I want to save it again? I say, no, I already have. Okay. So now, if you've installed VMS import, it always installs it in the same place. Your C drive, under Program, Files, it will be under TeamSoft Solutions, and then you will go to VMS Import. And that's very fun. Okay, so apparently I just copied mine straight onto my desktop. Where did I put it? That's hilarious. There it is. I really need to clean that up. And if you haven't imported it, this is what it does. Sounds like somebody's got a sorting machine on in the background. Does everybody else hear that?
Yeah, we can hear it as well.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so come on, open up for me. Okay. So, you will open up your VMS import, and this is how we'll get. Now, this same sort of thing is how we can bring in a chart of accounts. We could bring in your unit residence. So, I know that all of you have we have a conversion tool to help you bring in your existing database. But if you get a new property from somewhere, you can bring in the information using this same tool. And then also you can bring in your vendors. So this VMS import is very handy. Right now we're going to bring in the chart of accounts. I'm going to go in and tell what file I'm going to grab it from. And then I saved it as a tab delimited. I would tell it what property I'm going to import it in. Now, if you come up to the ribbon and you do the open folder thing, there is templates right there. It will tell you, basically it's telling them what is in each column. So I have code, name, type, and category. So if in your spreadsheet you put the name first, you can just move these arrows and change it. But this is how this tool will know what's in column A, what's in column B, what's in column C. Okay? Now, it's kind of funny. I've been doing this for a long time, and what I discovered is everybody calls things different. Like some people say equity, some people say capital, some people say revenue, some people say sales, some people say assessment income. And so for that type column, this first column here will tell you all the different things that you had in your spreadsheet, which apparently I must have grabbed something really crazy. So let me grab what I meant to grab. There it is. Okay. Okay. So I had assets, I had capital, I had expenses, I had income. This is just what was on my spreadsheet. I had liabilities, I had operating, and I had reserves. Okay, so what the software wants you to do, this is what VMS called it. Well, we called it assets, we called it capital, we called it expenses. You know, a lot of it, you guys will think, well, that's really dumb. You know, why did they do that? And the reason why is because we had people who called it something else. And so we had to, you know, like I said, they might have put sales or they might have put revenue. And so the software didn't know where to bring it in. So all we're doing is mapping what you had on your spreadsheet to this, because you understand, right? So now I'm going to go to import button, and I'm going to look to see if it looks right. So I have one column code, and I have code. I have my names, those look right. I have my types, and I have my categories. Everything looks really good. So if it didn't look right, I can always go back to the start button and move these, and then I would need to go and say refresh, and it'll sort it. So this is a good example of how it wouldn't be. Oops, code, it says operating, name says the number. That's not how I want it to come in. So I'd go back and I would fix it. And then I would refresh. Oop, looks better, right? So once you're happy with your import, you're going to hit this import button right there. And when it's done, it will say if it was successful or if you had an error. But usually if you look right here, you most of the time we're going to be successful. And there we go. It's been successful. Okay. So now I can go back and I can open VMS. Now, see, I don't right there. A lot of times when you make a big change, you have to get out of the module that you were in, property setup, and come and then go back in. Sometimes I can just go to a different property and come back in and refresh it, which is what it did. Okay? So first thing we're going to do is hopefully you'll, if you have any trouble, you let me know, and I'll call you back and help you. But you want to make your first property, whether it's going to be a template or the property you're going to use. We want to import in our chart of accounts, and then you'll want to come in if on your chart, if this is your master property, and this first one was everybody use CAB or whoever it is, I'd go to the bank tab, I'd right click, and because I set those up in program defaults, I'll grab the bank that I use. So I'm going to put Community Association Bank, I'm going to grab that, then I'll go back to accounting, and now it'll be there. I'll rename it here if I want, because whatever I put here is what's going to be on my balance sheet. And then I would put my routing number in, 104. I used to know this by heart. This is one of the reasons having certain things that you can copy over is really nice. Okay. Will you all be making a master template, or will you be omitting that step?
We'll be doing a master, but I didn't see where you added the bank.
Okay, so the bank is where originally it's in the setup, program default, and here's the banks. So we have account tab and then bank. So to add a new bank, you come up, you do the drop down, you say add bank, and this is where I ask you to go in and add in banks that you use. Whether they're CDs or operating accounts, you would add them here, okay? Once they're added here, they'll show up on property setup, exactly. So now when I come here, under the bank tab, I can right-click and say add bank, and this is all the banks that I had set up there. And then I can just drop and drag them over onto this tab, okay?
Okay.
Okay. And then, now, if this is my master template, you only would put the routing number. You're not going to put the account number because that account number is unique to the property, and this is a master. But a routing is not, okay? It's unique to the bank. So we can put that here, one less step, okay? So this gives you, the chance to go in and kind of just clean and make this up as nice as you want. Then you'll come in and you'll enter your departments. Remember, you have to have at least one department. Okay? Now, this right here, the capital account number, is asking you at the end of their fiscal year, where do you want the profit or loss to roll up? Now, this is used for people who do not close their year, okay? I am going to teach you to close your year, so you would add nothing here, okay? But if you're not going to be closing your fiscal year and let VMS calculate that number for you every time it renders a report, then you can put an account number, but you wouldn't close and put a number here, okay? And then I'm going to put reserves. Okay. I'm going to go to the Information tab. The Information tab, when you first start a property, and we're all going to convert, for all three of you, one of your associations. When we create our first property, we do not want any of the AR data to get released to the GL. So when we first start, we put this at no GL post. So a master will always be at GL no post. Okay? So once you bring in the beginning balances, then you go in and you turn the posting level on so that things get released back to the general ledger. So our choices are property or community. And the difference is this. So let me ask you, each of your offices, do any of you have the need to have a property, and then within that property, you have to produce financials? So remember the one I told you that had 70 departments? They are a master. They have this master, I think of it like a master association, but under that they have villages, and each village has its own, and we call them communities, has its own financial report, but then they need it all to roll up into the master as one. So that's when we say it's at a community level. So because we wanted to make for each of our communities a financial report, and then we want one big property report. So do any of you have that need?
Yes, Hunter's Creek has that need.
Okay. I will work with you on one-on-one to do that, because it's a little bit, it's very simple, but I don't want to confuse the other two groups. And so if you don't mind, I'll work with you on just that one when you have those properties.
Perfect.
Okay? Thank you. Okay, so most of yours later will be property. Your default department means when it does your charges, what your default charges are, and usually it's the operating. It doesn't mean you can't choose other departments. Where you want your net income, profit or loss, what category line, you name these. What do you want it? Where do you want it to be on your balance sheet? And then for the current year profit or loss, we always call it, I want to okay. Give me a second. Okay, so here is a list. Like I said, you will want to go on to VMS and look at the examples of the different income statements and balance sheets, because we have a lot of choices, and so you can see which one works best for your company. So if I come here, let me just put a standard one. there we go. So if you look at this one, so you have the assets, that's a category. Now, under equity, that's what, right there, see where it says income, that is the question this is for. Where do you want that net income to report under what category, okay? So under here, I said that I wanted it to go here. Now, we will always call that profit or loss net income. But if you want it to be called something else, and you can see on this report, the person who created it was using current year. So what they did is right here, they wrote the word current year. If it had been my report, I also put parentheses, or if it's in parentheses, it's a loss. That's just the way I always did it, so I put it here. Some people like it to say something completely different, like excess revenue. So whatever you want that current year net income to say on your balance sheet, you can overwrite our net income label, okay? And that's where you do it. So it's just giving you another choice to name this section right here. Make sense? Okay. And then this is a place for to record what your suspense account is. So what I'm going to kind of stop right now. Oh, actually I'm not. I'm going to go on one more thing. If you feel comfortable and doing your own property without me, and you want to go ahead, you can. So you would do the GL, you would do your department, and then the other thing that you want to create is your AR posting codes. So what we use, it's still under the accounting tab, it's under AR, and then posting codes. When you first start, you cannot use the main information tab because it's going to ask you questions you have to have posting codes set up for. So what you would do, we have 2 lines of data we're going to put in. So the first one right here is posting code name. You call it whatever you want. So assessments, monthly assessments, whatever you call it, dues. Now, program area just says where you are going to be able to use it. There's 2 places that you would manually put in charges, and that's on an adjustment area or a new resident. Most people just say all. Now, the type is really important. So if I had a charge that I want to charge a homeowner on a repetitive basis, whether it is monthly, quarterly, annually, semi-annually, that type is an assessment. So, example, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say cable. So we have a situation that we charge a cable fee every month to this association. Now we think of it as it pops up as the default miscellaneous. It's a miscellaneous type charge. But a type in this VMS is its function, okay, not its description, okay? So the function is it's an assessment because I do it as a repetitive basis. Does that make sense? But a key deposit I do randomly. So I'm going to do it here or there on someone's account. So I don't do it every month. So it's a miscellaneous. Same with a fine. Now, late fee, the type, is a late fee type because I want it to be able to interface with delinquency control. And that's why my choice would be late fee. Okay? So most of the charges you're going to use will either be an assessment type, a miscellaneous type, or a late fee type. Now, the reason we have more types is because some of you may integrate with a company like CondoCert that will pull data for your resale packages. So certain charges need to be clarified for those resale packages. So they're here. So we have a capital contribution and a community enhancement. Those, if I was not going to be using condo search or something, would be just miscellaneous. But because I want to, kind of give it more description for that purpose, I'm going to put a capital or community enhancement, okay? Or resale capital contribution. So most of the time, what you see down here is just more for the resale packages than the function within VMS. Okay? Does that make sense? So, an assessment type doesn't mean the description of the fee, but its function in VMS. I need to do it repetitively. So miscellaneous would be those occasional things, late fee. So if I had interest fee that I charged, it's going to be a late fee. Okay? So you'll want to put any charge that you charge a homeowner. Now, I get laundry income for this association. Do I put laundry on here? No, because I don't put that on a homeowner account. Okay? So these are just charges that would be billed back to a homeowner for some reason that you're going to put on their account. Now, once you put in your name and your type, then you need to tell the debit and the credit associated. If you're a cash-based property, you still are going to put in an AR number, okay? VMS will manage it for you as a cash base. So you would be your debit to the AR and then a credit to your income, which would be the same thing if you're accrual. So for cash base, the way that VMS knows that you're a cash base is on this information tab here. You will click this box right here for cash base. What do you use currently? Are you all using cash or accrual, or do you use both?
We're all accrual.
Okay, so Brink, you're all accrual.
We're accrual.
Hunters is accrual.
Okay, so Keystone, you're accrual. And
Yes,
what about
we are.
Hunter? Okay, you're all
Accrual.
accrual? I love it.
Yes.
You're all true accounting. Okay. Okay, so you won't check that. Now, you'll go in and do the same thing. Now, if you have a segregated AR, then you'll have a different AR number here, but most of you will be a debit to your AR account and then a credit to your income account. Now, you can just type in the number if you know it, like I can go 1200, or you can use the drop down to look for the chart of account number that you want to use. Okay? So either way works just fine. Now, every charge code that you have has to have a debit and credit. Now, the one thing that is unusual about the way VMS is set up is your payments. Your payments are, so if I wanted to make a payment code for my CAB account, here's my payment. The type for a payment is a credit. And we would think normally that this is the debit side of this will be my AR number. But the way that VMS processes your data is this. All money will come in and it will debit cash and credit prepaids. Okay? So it all goes to prepaid assessments. Then the software within itself looks at the homeowner's account, especially if you had a segregated AR. And it says, okay, I'm applying money to assessments. So what it will do is it will go in and it will credit the AR number associated with it, and it will debit the prepaid account. So as it applies the money to those open charges, it will reduce the prepaid account for you. Okay? So it does seem a little strange because, but it is following GAAP accounting rules. It's just that this is the way internally it processes. So if I was to show you in my general ledger for a property that is a cash base, I mean, not a cash base, but a accrual, or any property really. If I go to my prepaid account, you will see under the notes this apply credit. Okay, so the apply credit is when I got it. I already got the money, and then the software is applying it to homeowner accounts. So the money came in for the account 93,412. Then as it looked for invoices that it was paying off, so it went in and it reduced the AR number associated with it. So this had been segregated, and then the prepaid. And this is just done automatically, and it's this what we call apply credit. Does that make sense? It's probably the most unusual thing, and a little bit harder for people to grasp. But if you think about it, all money comes in, it goes here. As it applies, it reduces the AR associated with it, and then it reduces the prepaid. So all right. So that's the one thing that is different about when you set up your payment account, is that it will be that, and it will be to your prepaid thing. So what I'd like you to do before tomorrow, hopefully, is get your chart of accounts ready. Go in and create a property, you call it test property. If you feel comfortable, go ahead and import it in. But if it's not, we'll do it tomorrow. But you'll bring in your chart of accounts, you'll assign the departments, and then we're going to start doing our AR posting codes and doing the debits and credits associated with it. Okay? Any questions on that? All right. Now, other areas in this accounting department that will copy over is the AP. And basically all you need to do on the AP is select the accounts payable account that you're using, and it does allow you to attach signatures for those accounts. Now, if anything here on the AP tab will not be board members. So these would be in-house people that are authorized to sign. Now, if let's say Dean is authorized to sign on every account, then you would go ahead and put him on the master. If he's only on certain, then you're going to do it as per property. Okay? So think about, if you're doing the master, this is going to be if everybody uses it or the majority. If I chose property and I copy from the master, these will copy over. Let's put signatures in here. Oh, I don't. Anyway, I can always clear it off any property by clicking this one, and it would clear it, okay? But you'd go in here, you'll put the chart of accounts. This I will talk about in AP training. The AR, we've talked about the GL, and then the coupon. We'll talk more about setting up the coupon when we set up our first property. Okay. Any questions about that? So what we're going to do is tomorrow, hopefully you've got your chart of accounts. We're going to set up your test. We're going to set up your first property using that test, that template, and then I'm going to work with you, each of you getting a conversion to bring into that first property that you're going to convert. Okay? And I've already scheduled with one office, and I'll be contacting if I haven't contacted your office, I will be contacting you today or tomorrow to schedule that conversion. Okay, so that you have. Now, that property that we convert is not going to be one that you're going to go live with. It's going to be one that you're going to use so you can see how VMS brings in your data. You can use it as you're learning AR, AP, and everything else so that you're going to be using data or information that you're familiar with. Make sense?
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay. So, any questions about what I need you to do tonight?
No, we're good.
Okay. You have any questions, just email me. I am on East Coast time, so if you are West Coast, and I know there is at least one of you that is, after your 2 o'clock, if you would just send the request to support, if it's something you need help with right away, and Jennifer will get back to you and help you. So she's my backup for the West Coast when I'm off at your 2 o'clock, okay?
Great.
And then our Florida client, I'm here at the same time that you are. Okay.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. I will talk to you tomorrow unless you have any questions and you need me to call you back directly.
We're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. I will talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.